In the 1984 classic film Footloose, Kevin Bacon's character Ren McCormick moves to the small town of Beaumont, Utah, only to discover the horrifying reality that the town's officials have banned dancing altogether. The premise of this seemingly absurd plot was actually loosely inspired by the real-life town of Elmore City, Oklahoma, which had a ban on dancing since its founding in 1898, in an attempt to curb heavy drinking. One fierce advocate for the dancing ban was Reverend F.R. Johnson. "No good thing has ever come from dance. If you have a dance, somebody will crash it, and they'll be looking for only two things: women and booze. When boys and girls hold each other, they get aroused. You can believe what you want, but one thing leads to another." Because of this ban, Elmore City never once held a prom, until February 1980, when the junior class made national news by requesting permission to hold one. The vote came down to a 2-2 tie, and school board president Raymond Lee broke it with the words, "Let 'em dance." Now that's all fine and dandy, but maybe Reverend Johnson and Footloose's antagonist, Reverend Moore, played by John Lithgow, were onto something. Could the innocent act of dancing with your sweetheart really be one step away from two-stepping with the devil himself? Well, what if I told you that back in the 1500s, a town actually danced itself nearly to death? In 1518, the city of Strasbourg saw hundreds of people break into an unstoppable dance. They couldn't stop moving, even as they collapsed from exhaustion. This bizarre and frightening story of the dancing plague of 1518 is a real-life example of when dancing became deadly. Our story begins in Strasbourg, a city that was then part of the Holy Roman Empire. Today it's in modern-day France. In July 1518, a woman named Frau Trophia stepped into the street and began to dance. At first, it didn't seem too unusual, but she didn't stop. She danced for hours, through the night and into the next day. Her feet began to bleed, but she couldn't control herself. There was no music, she simply danced to eerie silence. Soon, her daughter, Emma Gotz, joined her. Before long, curious onlookers who witnessed this strange spectacle began to mimic their movements. Within days, more than 30 other choreomaniacs were moving and grooving through the streets alongside the two women. Over the next month, the group swelled to nearly 400 townspeople, all gripped by this mysterious, unstoppable urge to dance until they drop. They danced in the streets, in the courtyards, on bridges, anywhere that there was space. Before long, dancers began to collapse, dead from strokes or heart attacks. Their movements were described as spasmodic, with violent convulsions that left their bodies drenched in sweat. Their arms would thrash wildly, and witnesses noted that their eyes often looked vacant and expressionless. Blood would begin to pool up as their swollen feet began to bleed through their shoes. Many cried out for help, but they couldn't stop. If they hadn't succumbed to a heart attack or stroke, they would collapse from sheer exhaustion, dehydration, and hunger. At the peak of the outbreak, some reports claimed as many as 15 deaths per day. Though the final death toll remains unknown, eyewitnesses describe people screaming in pain as their bodies failed them, yet their feet kept moving. Local authorities and nobles were desperate to put a stop to it. Doctors couldn't explain what was happening. Some blamed demonic possession or witchcraft, while others believed it was a natural sickness caused by hot blood. In a bizarre attempt at a cure, they decided to encourage even more dancing, hoping the frenzy would burn itself out. They cleared out the guild halls, built stages, and even hired musicians and professional dancers to accompany the afflicted. But instead of ending the madness, it backfired and made things even worse. More people joined in, and more collapsed from exhaustion. Exact numbers are debated, but the image remains haunting, entire crowds dancing themselves to the grave. Eventually, the town was forced to put a ban on public dancing altogether. But this didn't stop the dancers, as many feared the plague was a punishment from Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancing, who was believed to punish sinners by forcing them to dance uncontrollably. To avoid damnation, some townspeople even joined the dancing voluntarily, hoping it would cleanse them of their sin. Desperate to break the curse, the council also banned music. They ordered the dancers to perform a ritual at the shrine of Saint Vitus. The afflicted were led there, wearing red shoes sprinkled with holy water, with painted crosses atop their soles, and holding small crosses in their hands. By early September, almost as suddenly and mysteriously as it had begun, the outbreak started to subside. Word spread that the dancers had apparently been forgiven by the saint, and the few who were still afflicted with the dancing were taken to a nearby mountaintop to pray for absolution. And so the dancing plague of 1518 finally came to an end. So what really caused this dance fever? Historians and scientists still debate it today. One theory suggests a mass psychogenetic illness, better known as mass hysteria, where a group of people share a psychological or emotional stress response. Strasbourg in 1518 was no walk in the park. It was the perfect storm for something like this: famine, disease, poverty, and constant fear of divine punishment. Another theory blames ergot poisoning, a toxic mold that grows on damp rye bread. Ergot causes hallucinations, muscle spasms, and convulsions, similar to LSD, but many experts doubt the ergot was the main cause, because the dancing was organized and lasted for weeks, not typical from ergot poisoning, leaving the door open to perhaps this being a genuine case of divine punishment or demonic possession. Interestingly, this wasn't the only dancing mania in medieval Europe. Similar outbreaks were recorded in Germany, the Netherlands, and Switzerland during the 14th and 16th centuries, but none were as large or as deadly as the Strasbourg outbreak in 1518. To this day, the dancing plague of 1518 remains one of the strangest medical mysteries ever recorded, a haunting reminder of how powerful the mind can be when fear, faith, and mass hysteria collide. So next time you find yourself entranced on the dance floor until dawn, make sure you've got some red shoes and holy water handy, just in case you end up busting a move all the way to an early grave. So that'll do it. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and like, subscribe to History, Legends, and Lore for more strange stories from history, and go ahead and leave a comment of what dance move you would have done if you were stuck dancing till you dropped. And as always, have a great day and take it easy.